Hey, welcome to Fred Talk, inspiration and truth from a friend. Today, I want to talk to you about the life cycle of a business because every business goes through these stages, and it's really important to understand what's going on at the different stages of an organization, especially if you are starting a business, growing a business. Sometimes it can be frustrating, and I want to just give you a handle on the different stages. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and let's talk through this. So as you can see there's a graph, and every business starts as a startup. So there's an idea, there's a concept, there's a visionary that starts the company. And in the startup phase, that is when vision is tremendously important. The owner has to be tremendously present. They really drive everything. In fact, most businesses start with just the owner, maybe one or two, a handful of people, but the owner is really putting most of their time and energy into it. There's not a lot of financial resources. Usually the resources are the people or the owner. So in the startup, it just takes a lot of mental energy, a lot of emotional energy, physical energy, and a lot of time to financially get strong. In fact, most companies fail. So when they start, 75% of companies fail after the first year. And one of the primary reasons why companies don't make it is the lack of finances, because most companies take between 2 and 5 years to become profitable. I have been fortunate to start 3 different organizations, nonprofits and for-profits, and I have been able to help each one of them become profitable within the first year. That's pretty rare, but most of them take a lot longer. So what are the stages that we go through in order to be able to get to where we have a sustainable, successful organization? Well, after the startup, the next stage is the beginning growth stage or infancy. So think about kids. Infants, they need a ton. They need your energy. They need your time. They don't have a lot to give back. And so you're putting a ton into it in the beginning stages. So that's important to know even with your family, because there's some financial things that you probably won't be able to do the first few years of growing the business. And that can cause a lot of strain on relationships in a marriage if both people aren't on the same page and don't understand that. And if you don't have resources to get you through that time. Sometimes people need to work another job in order to have some regular income to give time to be able to build the revenue model. Or maybe have a window of time where you have finances to be able to use to be able to grow the business and give you some time. But it's just you're gonna go through bumps, you're gonna go through setbacks and things that you didn't expect that are hard and challenging. That's just the reality of starting a business. That's why 75% of them don't make it, because it takes margin. It takes financial margin. It takes knowledge margin. You just don't know what you don't know. That's why coaching is so important along the way. Having somebody in your corner that thinks like you, that understands, that's been where you've been, because most owners often feel lonely because they're the only one that thinks the way they think, and everybody else thinks you're crazy that you think this is going to work. And how would you put so much time and energy and not be making money on this? And so there's a knowledge gap. There's an emotional margin piece of you're the one that has to be energized and be committed to it and disciplined. And so you have to keep yourself strong and be able to have balance to take care of yourself. And then there's a relational margin also, just the time it takes to build your network and to be able to get your base up to where it can be consistent. So that whole infant stage is just the beginning of growth. Then you move into an adolescent stage where you really see some progress, you see some results, you see some sales, maybe even building a staff of people and growing, but there's a lot of growing pains. And here's the reality about any organization. Every time a company doubles, so let's say you start the company and you have no revenue, you do 50,000 the first year. Well, from the beginning to the 50,000, what it took to get there, those systems will no longer work to get to the next level. So to go from 50,000 to 100,000, You're going to need new systems. You're going to need to lead differently. And so that's why I call it the adolescent stage. It's always changing. And just when you figured out systems, they're not working. And it takes a long time to figure out a system. And to be honest, in the beginning stages, sometimes focusing too much on a system can cause growth to not happen, because you got to be flexible and be able to adjust. Now, you need to be crystal clear on who your target audience is and what your offer is, but you might have to make some revisions and adjustments to make sure that you are actually meeting a real need in the market, and that financially it's viable and something that people are going to pay for. And so there's just a lot of changes and uncertainties that happen in that adolescent stage of growing. Then you get to the place where you face maturity. And maturity is where things are consistent, where the revenue is growing, where sales are happening, and where you're able to repeat the process. Because the reality is your company is not successful unless it's repeatable. Success is repeatable. Same thing in life. You don't have successful relationships if you can't repeat things that grow it and keep it strong. So maturity is getting to that place where you have certain values and you have certain practices and systems that you do that produce consistent quality work or products and services. And so that brings revenue in and consistency in the sales. And so that just takes over and over again, working at it and working at it and working at it. And eventually maturity develops when you stick with it. So then once you hit maturity, really, you've hit the peak and you've hit the critical mass, you've hit momentum. More people start buying your product, more people wanting your service, more people want to be involved in your organization. And then it's about sustaining that. And to be honest, once you've hit maturity, the sustaining level is really when things start to go downhill. It doesn't feel like it, because at the sustaining level, revenues keep growing, people keep jumping onto your team, more and more clients want to be part of it. So everything's expanding and growing, but it's more of a sustaining level of doing the same thing. And so you start to lose the edge of growth, and things start to go downhill at that point. But again, most people don't see it. A visionary leader can see it ahead and realize we don't want to get stagnant or complacent on things, because if we do, then that drop is going to continue pretty fast. And of course, in our society with technology, you have to adjust and move quickly. And so you can't take forever to turn a ship around. So even though maturity and sustaining things is good and brings security, it's a false security, because you're on the downward decline at that point. The reason you're on the downward decline is because once you have critical mass and once you have momentum and more people wanting to be a part of it, you end up having more people that are consumers rather than producers. And in the early stages of an organization, when it's growing, it attracts people that are change agents and that are willing to adjust and change and grow and invest in something before they get a return on it. But once you get to maturity and consistency, then everybody wants to be a part of it to be able to receive from it. So that's a consumer mentality. That's like an entitlement kind of mentality. And so a lot of those people don't want to change and aren't the ones that are going to help you move it to the next direction. So sometimes that can cause some frustration in staff, and you might recognize that you need to bring on some new people or some new blood. And so that's when it talks about a turnaround or an event. So there's often things that happen that a leader has to initiate in order to help an organization continue to grow. Maybe a new product line, or it may be some research and development and trying a new service, or making some adjustments of the way that you're going about doing things. And not everybody's going to like that. And so sometimes the people that come along with you don't stay with you. And that's okay. That's part of the process. That can be difficult and painful and frustrating sometimes. But here's what you find. If you have people in leadership over other people that aren't willing to go to the next level, then people hit up against that. And the people that are under their leadership will feel that. And the people that are the change agents and that can really help you move it forward, they'll leave unless they have an opportunity to express their leadership that fits within the vision of the organization. So there's often, like I said, an event or a turnaround kind of piece. And if that doesn't happen, then you start the slow decline. And eventually you just start dealing with people problems all the time. And all you're dealing with is the existing clients, and you're not creating new clients. And so decline starts happening and revenue starts going down. And then everybody gets frustrated. And eventually it goes down to death or dissolution, where the company is dissolved. In order to stop that from happening, there has to be a new life cycle that started, a turnaround to create a new life cycle. And in an organization, there's the builders that start things, then there's the sustainers that grow things, and then there's the group that comes along. The third generation of people is the consumers of it. And those people never end up being ones that can start a new life cycle because they didn't understand what it was like to start something. They weren't part of that. They weren't involved with the original leader. But the people that are maintainers and sustainers, they were part of that, and they can see the value in that. And so it often takes a new leader, a new type of visionary to come in to the organization after a certain amount of time. And it can be the original leader that can do that multiple times in the organization and the life of it, or it can be that leader bringing on new people that can play that role to help the organization be able to start a new life cycle of growth. And I also talk about another cycle, which is a cycle that talks about the different types of people. And it's very familiar and it's out there in a lot of different places. But there's basically 4 different types of people, and some of them are drawn to the startups. Other people are drawn to when there's maturity. Other people are drawn to come after everything is kind of sustained and simple and easy. And then there's other people that are never going to help an organization really grow. So I hope this is helpful, just understanding some of those different stages. Every organization goes through it, and it can go through it quickly. It can take a while to go through it. You can be in and out of these stages based on product development or services or your leadership team. But this is a life cycle that every organization goes through. To be honest, every human goes through it also, and every society goes through it. So it's just important to understand these principles and understand how things function to be able to know where you're at, because sometimes just knowing where you're at is the biggest factor in being able to determine the best step to take forward. And if you don't understand what stage you're in, then you really can't lead very effectively. So make sure you know where you're at in the organization and what it's going to take, because that's really important to be able to sustain things and be able to really build a successful organization. So this is just a little talk about principled success, and I hope you find this helpful in growing your organization.